She knocked on my door at midnight, and I will never be the same for it. Not because of what she said, or what she asked, or even because she was standing there in the dark with her hair loose and her feet bare on the cold boards of the porch. I will never be the same because of the look in her eyes when I opened that door. That pale green gone bright and desperate under the single lamp burning low behind me. It was the look of a woman who had used up every other option before she raised her hand to knock on a drifter's door. And it broke something open in my chest that I hadn't known was still whole enough to break. "Can I sleep here tonight?" she said. Just that. No preamble, no apology. Her voice was steady, which told me more than her words. Women who are truly afraid shake. Clara Merritt was not shaking. She was something worse than afraid. She was decided. I stood there for a moment that lasted about 3 lifetimes, the cold October air rolling in past her and curling around my bare feet. And I looked at her the way a man looks at a thing that is going to change him, whether he invites it in or not. Then I stepped back from the doorway and said, "Come in, ma'am." She did. 3 weeks before that night, I had ridden into the Merritt farm on a gray horse named Patience and asked Eldon Merritt if he needed a ranch hand for the harvest. He looked me over the way he looked over everything, calculating, and told me I could sleep in the room above the tack shed for $4 a week and board. "Much obliged," I said, and shook his hand. That was the whole of the arrangement. I'd seen Clara Merritt exactly as many times as the work required. At supper, which I ate in silence while she moved between the kitchen and the dining room like a woman who had learned to occupy her own home the way a ghost does. Present, but untouching. Across the yard in the mornings. Once at the well, where we spoke 4 words because Eldon was watching from the porch. She had those green eyes and a way of looking at you that made you feel like she was measuring the distance between where you were and where you could be. She looked at me the way a woman looks at the horizon when she's been staring at 4 walls too long. I'd told myself it was nothing. Drifters don't entertain thoughts about married women. That's not a moral position so much as survival instinct. Then she knocked on my door at midnight, and all that sensible thinking fell apart like a fence in a flash flood. She stepped inside and stood near the door, not sitting, not moving toward the single chair or the narrow cot. The lamp threw amber light across the room, and I watched her take it in. My saddlebags on the floor, my coat on the hook, the dog-eared book laid face down on the crate I used as a nightstand. She pulled her shawl tighter. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said. And now there was something her voice hadn't let show at the door. Not quite a crack. More like the sound a door makes when it's been locked so long the hinges have gone stiff. "You ain't a bother, Mrs. Merritt," I said. I moved to the chair, leaving the cot open for her, and kept my voice easy. "You want to tell me what happened?" She shook her head once. "Nothing happened. Nothing ever happens." I understood that. There is a kind of nothing that is louder and heavier and more suffocating than any something. And it will wear a person down just as sure as a river wears down stone. "All right," I said. "You can have the cot. I'll sit up." She looked at me. "You don't have questions?" "I got plenty," I said. "Don't mean I'm entitled to answers." She let out a slow breath, the release of pressure that has been building somewhere interior for a very long time. And she sat down on the edge of the cot. If you're enjoying this story, take a second to subscribe to the channel. It truly means everything. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I'll leave a heart on every single one. Now let's keep riding, because this night is just getting started. We sat in the kind of silence that isn't uncomfortable so much as full, full of things that wanted saying and weren't ready yet. The lamp burned low between us. Outside, October wind moved through the prairie grass, and somewhere far off, a coyote called once and went quiet. I put another piece of wood in the small iron stove, not because the room needed it, but because it gave me something to do with my hands and her time to settle. When I turned back, she was watching the fire through the gap in the stove door, her knees drawn up slightly, bare feet tucked under the shawl. She looked young and tired. "How long have you been out here?" I asked. 6 years, she said. "I came from Ohio with Eldon. I was 21. She paused. "I thought it would be an adventure." "Wasn't it?" She looked at me with those pale green eyes, and the ghost of something moved across her face. Not quite a smile, not quite the opposite. "The first year, maybe," she said. "After that, it was just work and waiting." "Waiting for what?" "I don't rightly know anymore," she said. "That's the trouble." I leaned back and looked at the ceiling. I was 32 and had been moving since I was 19, ranch to ranch, season to season, never staying long enough to put down anything you could call a root. People asked why I didn't settle. The truth was, every time I came close to something that felt like it might hold me, I found a reason to move on. I told myself it was freedom. I reckon it was fear wearing freedom's hat. "Your husband," I said carefully. "He do something to you tonight?" She was quiet long enough that I was sorry I'd asked. Then she said, "He never does anything to me. 6 years of nothing happening. 6 years of eating supper across from a man who looks through you like you're a pane of dirty glass. 6 years of sleeping in a house where nobody says your name like it means anything." She stopped. "Tonight he looked at me at supper and said the biscuits were dry, and I realized that was the most he'd spoken to me in 4 days. And something in me just..." She pressed her fingers against her sternum. "I waited until he was asleep and I walked out." I didn't say anything. Silence offered honestly is worth more than words offered cheaply. "I know how it looks," she said. "How does it look?" "Like a woman who's lost her mind, coming to a stranger's room in the middle of the night." "I've been here 3 weeks," I said. "Ain't exactly strangers." She looked at me. "No," she said slowly. "I suppose not." There was something in the way she said that, quiet and careful, the way you handle something fragile, that made the room feel smaller. Not in a bad way. In the way a room feels smaller when the fire is burning and the wind is outside, and the smallness is shelter rather than constriction. I poured water from the pitcher into 2 tin cups and brought one to her. She took it with both hands, like she was cold to the bone. "What's your name?" she asked. "Your given name." "Wade," I said. She turned the cup in her hands. "Wade," she repeated, trying out the weight of it. "I'm Clara." "I know," I said. "I heard your husband say it once." She made a small sound that was not quite a laugh. "Once in 3 weeks. That sounds about right." We talked after that, about the farm, the horses, the Kansas winters. I told her about a cattle ranch in Texas, a horse outfit in Colorado, a summer driving freight through Wyoming I wouldn't recommend to any living soul. She listened the way people listen when they're hungry for something other than the sound of their own thoughts, and I talked more than I had in months. After a while, she said, "Don't you ever want to stop moving?" "Sometimes," I said, "when I'm somewhere that feels worth stopping for." She didn't respond to that directly, but she looked at me with those clear green eyes, and whatever calculation had been going on behind them came to some quiet conclusion. "You can sleep," she said. "I'll be all right." I just needed to be somewhere else for a while.
That mattered to me.
I ain't tired, I said. You sleep. I'll keep watch. Watch for what? Nothing, hopefully. But I'll keep it anyway. She lay down on the cot and pulled the blanket up and closed her eyes. I sat in my chair by the low fire and listened to the wind on the prairie and thought about the courage it takes for a person to walk out of their own life, even just for one night, and knock on a door that has no business being knocked on. I thought about Clara Merritt, and I told myself firmly to stop thinking about Clara Merritt. I was not entirely successful. I don't know at what hour she woke. I had dozed in the chair, not meaning to, and when I opened my eyes, the fire had burned to coals, and the room was dark except for faint, cold blue pre-dawn at the window. Clara was sitting up on the cot, knees against her chest, watching me. "Fell asleep," I said. "I apologize." "Don't," she said softly. "I watched the fire for a while. It was nice." 4 o'clock, you reckon? 4, maybe 4:30. She turned toward the window. "Eldon gets up at 5. I need to be back before then." "I'll walk you back." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." She looked at me the way she had since the beginning, that measuring look. And whatever she found in my face satisfied something, because she nodded once. We sat in the coals light without speaking. Outside, the prairie had gone to that deep blue hush of the last hour before dawn, when the coyotes have finished calling and the birds haven't started yet. And the world holds itself very still, like it's waiting to see what the new day will require of it. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said. "Go ahead." "Why do you stay? In any one place for any length of time? You could go anywhere." "I stay because the work needs doing," I said. "And then because you get used to a place, or a place gets used to you. Hard to tell which comes first." She was quiet a moment. "I used to think about leaving," she said, like a confession. "In the first few years, I'd plan it out, where I'd go, how I'd get there. But I never did." "Why not?" "Because I made a promise," she said. "And even when the thing you made the promise to stops being what you thought it was, the promise is still yours. It's the only thing that still is." She looked at her hands. "Does that make sense?" "It does," I said, and I meant it. There is a kind of honor in that, which is not the same as happiness, but is not nothing either. She looked up at me, and the space between us felt charged, the way air feels before lightning when you can smell the storm before it arrives. "I shouldn't be here," she said, but she didn't move. "No," I said. "You probably shouldn't." And I didn't move either. It would have been easy, right then, to let what was happening in the air between us become something else. I was aware of that with every quiet beat of my heart. I was also aware that she was a married woman in a hard situation, and that what she had come looking for tonight was shelter, not complication. There is a difference between a person reaching out in loneliness and a person choosing. I was not about to confuse the two. "You're a good man, Wade Calloway," she said, and the way she said it told me she had been thinking some of the same things I had. "Don't give me too much credit," I said. "Just a man trying to do right by the situation." She smiled at that. A real smile, small and private, the kind she probably didn't use very often. It rearranged her face entirely. I stored it somewhere I didn't examine too closely. "What will you do?" I asked, after winter. She thought about it. I don't know, she said honestly. I've been living as though I have no choices left. Maybe I need to stop assuming that's true. Seems like a reasonable thing to stop assuming, I said. She held my gaze. Do you ever think about stopping somewhere? Not for work, because the place was worth it? I'm starting to think about it more than I used to, I said carefully. The silence that followed was its own kind of answer. Then, from the direction of the main house, a door banged. We both went still. That sound, that single, flat bang of a wooden door in the pre-dawn dark, hit the room like a stone dropped into still water. Clara was on her feet before the echo died, shawl clutched at her throat, eyes wide. He's up early, she breathed. I was already at the window, standing to one side, looking out across the yard. The main house was a dark rectangle 40 feet away, one window throwing a thin yellow line of lamplight across the frost-whitened ground. A large shape moved on the porch. Eldon Merritt in suspenders and boots, lamp in hand, head turning slow and deliberate from side to side. Looking for something. Looking for her. He knows you're gone, I said. Clara pressed her hand flat against her sternum. He actually checked the room, she said, almost to herself. And in her voice was something I hadn't expected. Not fear, but a strange, tired amazement. Like she had been invisible for so long that being looked for felt like a different kind of wound. You need to get back, I said. I know. But she didn't move. I turned from the window. She was standing in the middle of the small room, the dying coals throwing low red light across her, hair still loose over her shoulders, feet still bare, that wool shawl around her like armor that doesn't cover enough. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman caught between the life she had and the life she hadn't let herself want yet. If I go out there, she said quietly, he'll ask where I've been. What will you tell him? She lifted her chin. The truth, that I went for a walk. In your nightgown, I said. In my nightgown, she confirmed, and that ghost of a smile moved across her face and was gone. I'll tell him I couldn't sleep, which is true. He going to make trouble? Eldon doesn't make trouble, she said, and 6 years of history lived in those words. He makes silence, which is its own kind of trouble, but not the kind you're worried about. I'm worried about all the kinds, I said. She looked at me, and something in her expression opened briefly, in a way she closed quickly. Wade, I'm thinking I'd like to make sure you get back to that house safe, I said simply. That's all. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. I pulled on my boots and coat and eased the door open, checking the yard. Eldon's back was to us, looking toward the road. I put my hand lightly at Clara's back, no more than a touch, and we moved along the shadow side of the shed, staying out of the lamplight. We were 10 feet from the kitchen door when Eldon turned. He saw us the same moment we saw him. The three of us stood in the cold pre-dawn yard in a triangle of silence, and the lamp in Eldon's hand threw long, wavering shadows across the frost. None of us moved. Eldon Merritt's cold blue eyes moved from his wife to me and back to his wife. His face didn't change. That was the most unsettling thing about him. A face that kept everything inside where it couldn't be answered. Clara, he said. Not a question, just the name. I couldn't sleep, she said, her voice even and clear. I was walking. Mr. Calloway saw me out in the cold and walked me back. She said it the way you say something that is mostly true and trusts itself to hold under examination. Eldon looked at me for a long moment. I met his gaze and held it without aggression, without apology. There was nothing to apologize for. I had given a woman in distress a safe place to sit and walked her home in the cold before dawn. That was the whole of it, and I would account for it to any man without flinching. "Much obliged," Eldon said to me. Those two words were so perfectly hollow, so correct and empty, that they were almost remarkable in their way. He looked back at Clara. "Get inside. Coffee'll need making." He walked back through the door without another word. Clara stood in the yard a moment, looking at the door he'd gone through. Then she looked at me. In the growing blue light of coming dawn, her face was clear and still, and something in it had resolved. Some decision in the process of being made had moved forward another notch. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't need to thank me, ma'am."
Do you ever want to stop
"Clara,"
moving
she said. I looked at her.
somewhere that
"Clara,"
feels worth
I said,
stopping for?
and she turned and went inside. I worked the rest of that day with my head down and my hands busy, which is the best prescription I know for not thinking about something you have no business thinking about. Split wood until noon, mended the north fence in the afternoon, spent the last of the light clearing out the far stall. Physical work has a mercy in it. It takes up the same space in your body that everything else is competing for and leaves less room for the interior noise. Eldon came and went across the yard without speaking to me, which was not unusual. He said nothing, and I said nothing. And the day went forward the way days do on working farms, relentless, with no patience for the things people carry in their hearts. At supper, Clara served roast chicken and bread and a dried apple pie set on the table without ceremony. She poured coffee and sat at the far end and ate with her eyes cast down. Eldon said nothing to her except to pass the salt. I ate in silence and tried not to look at her in any way that cost me something I couldn't afford. After supper, I was washing up at the pump when I heard her step behind me. I dried my hands and turned. She was standing 6 feet away with a lamp and the wind lifting pieces of that auburn hair across her face, and she looked at me steadily. "He's asked me to ask you to stay on through the winter," she said. I held very still. "Is that so?" "The winter's hard out here," she said, as though describing weather. "He says a ranch hand is useful through January." "And what do you think?" I asked. She didn't answer directly. She looked past me at the horizon, where the last of the sunset was burning itself out in long streaks of red and copper over the flat, dark line of the prairie. "I think," she said slowly, "that there are some situations where staying and going are equally dangerous, and a person has to decide which kind of danger they're built to survive." "That's a complicated way of answering a simple question," I said.
What if the thing you
"It's a
think
complicated
about
situation."
stops being what you
"It is,"
thought it was?
I agreed. She looked at me directly. Those green eyes were serious and clear, and whatever she carried behind them, she carried with the dignity of a person who has decided to be honest with herself, even when it costs something. "I want you to know," she said, "that I'll be all right, whatever you decide. I've been all right on my own before." "I know you will," I said, and I meant it without a doubt. "But I want you to know something else." Her voice dropped a note. "Last night was the first time in longer than I can say that I felt like a person in a room with another person. Not a wife, not a woman who belongs to a place and a set of obligations. Just a person, talking to another person." She paused. "That mattered to me. It mattered to me too, I said. We stood in the October cold, the lamp between us, the prairie wind moving the grass in long, dark waves, and the stars beginning to appear one by one in the east, patiently, as though the sky has all the time in the world to show you everything it has. I'm going to leave in the spring, she said, quiet, factual, the kind of statement a person makes when they have been arriving at a decision for a long time and have finally set it down and looked at it clearly. I have a sister in Missouri. I have some money I've been putting by for 3 years in a tin in the root cellar. She looked at me steadily. I'm telling you because it seemed like something you should know. I'm glad you told me, I said. Are you going to stay? She asked. I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the road that had brought me here, all the ranches and seasons and flat pre-dawn skies, and the particular loneliness of a man who moves through the world without leaving a mark on it. I thought about a small room with a low fire, and a woman who listened to Wyoming freight wagon stories with genuine attention, and a smile she didn't use very often, and green eyes that saw through the surface of things to whatever was underneath. I reckon I will, I said, through the winter at least. Something in her eased, a tension she'd been holding since she asked the question. All right then, she said. Good night, Wade. Good night, Clara. She turned and walked back to the house, the lamp swinging in her hand. I watched her go and stood out there in the cold for a long while after she'd gone inside, looking at the stars coming out over the Kansas prairie. And I let myself feel the full weight of the fact that sometimes a thing you didn't expect to find finds you first. I had ridden into this place with nothing but a gray horse and a worn-out coat, and the reliable habit of not staying anywhere long. I had planned to work the harvest, take my wages, and move on before the first snow. The plan seemed very far away now. She had said she was leaving in the spring, and I thought about spring and Missouri and the distance between here and there on a good horse with the weather turning mild. A man with no particular destination can take any road he pleases. I thought about a woman who pours coffee with both hands and tells the truth even when it costs her something. And I thought about the courage required to walk out of a life and begin imagining a different one. I have thought about that midnight knock every day since. The way she sounded when she said my name the first time. The way the firelight moved in her hair. The way she sat on the edge of that cot and told me, without quite saying it, that she still believed in the possibility of more than this. That is the thing about the frontier the maps don't tell you. It is not just a place. It is a proposition. It asks you every single day whether you are going to survive it or whether you are going to live it. And every now and then, in a midnight knock, in pale green eyes over a tin cup, in a woman walking out of one life toward another she hasn't named yet, the frontier makes you an offer. You can say no, tip your hat and ride on and spend the rest of your days wondering about the road you didn't take. Or you can step back from the doorway and say, "Come in, ma'am," and let whatever is going to change you, change you. I stepped back. I let her in, and I have never once been sorry for it. Before I ride off, thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. If it stayed with you, I would love it if you subscribed to the channel and drop a comment letting me know what city you're watching from. I'll put a heart on every single one. See you on the next one.